The 85th annual Sturgis motorcycle rally kicking off officially tomorrow, with thousands of riders hitting the roads for the 10-day celebration. Tonight, health officials are urging motorcyclists and drivers to use caution. Hannah Eckwall taking a look in this evening's First Alert Safety Check.
Across the country, motorcycle crashes have been on the rise for several years, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, with their most recent data coming from 2023. The NHTSA estimates that helmet usage is 37% effective in preventing fatal injuries for motorcyclists and 41% effective for their passengers.
One of the worst brain injuries I've seen, and I had to treat myself, was the patients who were involved in the motorcycle accidents without a helmet, and frequently their damage is catastrophic, irreversible, and those patients frequently are not able to go back to their average daily activities.
Sanford neurologist Dr. Scott Lim is referencing a traumatic brain injury. These are one of the most serious injuries a motorcyclist can sustain.
And this can impact many of the essential quality of life functions, such as their ability to speak, move, arms and legs. They can essentially be paralyzed, not regain, even to the point that they may not regain consciousness as well.
As motorcyclists look to travel to Sturgis, keep safety top of mind. Medical professionals advise you to wear a helmet, appropriate riding gear, ensure your bike is in good condition, and follow the rules of the road.
Once again, maintaining the proper safety measures like keeping a safety distance and driving within the speed limits and wearing helmets would be critical in preventing some of the unfortunate injuries.
For additional safety tips, head on over to dakotanewsnow.com and click Safety Check. In Sioux Falls, Hannah Eckwall, Dakota News Now.
And as always, if there is something that you would like us to safety check, you can email us a suggestion to news@dakotanewsnow.com.